Okay, Indiana is our last team in the Big Ten East to talk about here. 2-10 a year ago, 0-9 in conference, number 102 in F plus, number 72 projected this year according to SP plus, number 90 on offense, number 52 on defense. Tom Allen is entering his seventh season, has done some good things at Indiana. Obviously, it's a very difficult job. Last year, their offense just fell apart. It was ugly,
Yeah.
and that was not something like it feels like for most of the last decade, not every year, but most years, Indiana at least had something on offense. They had good running backs. They've put a few in the NFL. Jordan Howard comes to mind, Tevin Coleman.
Yep.
They've had a lot of good receivers over the years. Ty Freifogel was there a year ago, and it seemed like he really kind of faded after a strong 2020 season. They've even had some solid quarterback play, and last year it just all collapsed on itself. They do bring in Connor Bazelak from Mizzou.
Yes.
They also have Jack Tuttle returning, but I think it's probably Bazelak's job to lose. I imagine he will win that job. They do bring in a running back transfer from Auburn and from North Carolina. Sean Shivers and Josh Henderson are those names, and they feel good about those guys. I do think those are solid gets. DJ Matthews is probably the top receiver, but it feels like they're more thin there than they have been most of the last decade. Like usually there's three guys you feel good about. I'm not sure I can name three that I feel good about for them this year. Their offensive line needs to improve. Again, 5 years ago that was a strength of the team, and it feels like the last several years it's really kind of nosedived, and you just can't quite rely on their offensive line to be solid. That needs to improve. The defense, the big name is Taiwan Mullen. All first team All Big Ten 2 years ago. Injury issues last year, and they did lose a lot on defense. There's still some other guys, linebacker Cam Jones, safety Devon Matthews, that will be counted on to step up because they have played well in the past. It just I kind of like Indiana. Like they're sort of my number two team. So I'm a little more familiar with them than
Okay.
most people that aren't diehard Indiana fans. And I just don't see quite as many impact players on this roster as I'm used to seeing. And it's sad because I do think Tom Allen has, for the most part, done a good job there. And I'm not necessarily down on him long term because it is a tough job and maybe he can get them back to the place. A few years ago, they were going to a bowl game. It felt like it was almost written in stone every year they would go to a bowl game. That's a little heavy handed to say it quite
Well,
like that.
they lost to Ohio State by 7, and
Yeah.
if they had won that game, I believe they would have even been ahead of them in the Big Ten East in
Mm-hmm.
that race. Like they were really good that year. That was
Yes.
the what that was
2020.
the
Yeah.
yeah Michael Penix year where they could just throw for all kinds of yards and
Mm-hmm.
they were just lighting the world on fire. Now I'm just going to sneak in here for a bit.
Go ahead.
Connor Bazelak, I think he's underrated. I think he's really good.
Okay.
I think he'll probably win that job over Jack Tuttle. I think Sean Shivers is going to finally get his chance to shine. I think he's a really good back, and just because he was hiding behind Tank Bigsby
Yeah.
at Auburn, he didn't get as much shine. But I think he will. Like I think him. I don't know as much about Henderson from North Carolina, but I think Bazelak and Shivers will play well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like sneaky. This is like a sneaky team for me. I'm not going to say a
Okay.
darling. I haven't labeled them a darling yet. The number's 4. The number is 4.
You can also get a 4.5. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I'm going to be taking the over here. Spoiler
Okay.
alert, and I'm going to be taking 4. So I think they can beat Illinois, Idaho. I think they can beat Western Kentucky. Doesn't have Baylor Zappi anymore. Remember that quarterback
Bailey
from last
Zappi.
year
Yeah.
that
Yep.
threw for just thousands of yards. I think they beat Rutgers, and like I said, I think they end up getting Maryland as well. So yeah, kind of on this team this year. I think 5 wins is doable. Possibly even getting Purdue last game of the year, picking them off and getting bowl eligible again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on this team this year. I think Indiana is a team to watch. I see them going over 4, and I have a fairly high confidence of it. I know not supposed to be terribly confident in especially when you're betting Indiana in football, but feeling a little confident here. I just really felt I needed to get that one off my chest there.
Sure. I think that it's possible that you could see them go back to a bowl game this year, just based on what you laid out there.
Mm-hmm.
we're going to know pretty quick because they open with Illinois at home. And it feels like if they're going to go bowling, that has to be one of the six.
Has to be.
It
Yep.
has to be. And I tend to think that if they're going to go over 4.5, that also probably has to be one of the five. I'm a little more down on this team than you are. I'm going under the 4.5 number.
Okay.
I I don't love it. This is not one I would rush to bet on because I hope you're right. Like I'm rooting
Mhm.
for you to be right on this one.
Sure.
And it was more fun when Indiana was pointsy and always gave Ohio State a scare for 2.5 quarters. Like I
They
really
did.
enjoyed that team. And it
Yeah.
happened multiple times in the last decade. There was a couple of years, I mean, they took Michigan to overtime.
Yeah.
Actually, they beat Michigan, I believe, in 2020, which everyone else did too. But this was a fun team for most of the last decade.
Sure.
And last year was just really sad. And it bummed me out. And I'm hoping we return to the fun Indiana. I have to take under here. Just, I think 4 wins feels more likely than 5 to me.
Okay. I'm just going to talk you into them a little bit. Say they win that game against Illinois. Say they win that one. Then you get Idaho and Western Kentucky, who like those are, you'll be favored in those games.
Yep.
Probably at least against Western Kentucky. Hopefully.
They did beat Western Kentucky last year. That was one of the 2 wins.
With Bailey Zappi. Like that was
Yeah.
actually a sneaky good team last year,
Mhm.
and you beat them. Then the Cincinnati game is a tough one for a non-conference. You play Cincinnati again. I believe you played them last year as well, right?
Yeah, but by the way, they competed with Cincinnati for most of that game last year.
They did.
Kind of shot themselves in the foot a few times. And it felt like they had a little moment there after just the opening blowout against Iowa where they had like 3 pick sixes or something stupid.
Yeah.
It felt like they rebounded a little bit and then it just sort of collapsed when they got to Big Ten play.
Cincinnati broke Indiana last year.
You could
That's
say
what
that, but then they did beat Western Kentucky after them.
Okay, fair enough. That was half of their wins.
Yeah.
But okay, so they get Illinois, Idaho, then Western Kentucky to start out the year.
Mhm.
They could easily be 3-0 going into that Cincinnati game.
Sure.
I really think they could. And like suddenly that starts to get like that. You feel a little froggy then at that point. Like you're playing with house money at that point. So you still get games against Maryland, Rutgers later on, Purdue. That one seems interesting. You could even that game at Nebraska, sneaky. That one could be sneaky. So yeah, I think Indiana will sneak up on some teams. They're not going to upset Penn State or Ohio State or Michigan State or Michigan, but they're going to sneak up on some of like the lesser ones, the middle tier. I think they can pop up and get one of those guys.
Yeah. I think I would probably agree with you if I felt better about their offensive line and receiving core. And for years, it felt like you could kind of count on their offensive line to be at least solid and the receiving core to be probably one of the top 4 in the Big Ten.
Right.
And I just don't trust them this year in those specific position groups. So
Fair enough.
I hope you're right. I'm not betting on it this year.
Fair enough.